Thank you so much for tuning in to the MMA Roundtable. It is May 1st. It's May Day. We had UFC 159 this past Saturday. A very, very wild card. We have a lot to talk about from that. Jones vs. Sonnen. Finally, for once, we don't have a UFC card coming up this coming weekend, but we got a little bit of news. As always, we got Guess That Tweet and our Boneheads of the Week for you. So yeah, without any further ado, let's do this. Thanks again for tuning in to the MMA Roundtable. We very, very much appreciate your support. We're here. This is a little conglomeration of the MMA podcast, MMA Mental, and Word on the Street. This is the slimmest cast we've ever had on the MMA Roundtable. It's only three of us. It's myself, Jay, and Ray. We got Ray from MMAmental.com. What's going on with MMA Mental, buddy?
We've been doing interviews again throughout the week. We've been focusing on a local event this week. We're covering an event in Redditch. It's going to be an open air event in the middle of a soccer stadium, or football stadium as we call it, and it's going to be this bank holiday weekend. Bank holiday weekend, 26th of May. So we'll be covering that. So I've been interviewing a few of the fighters on that, and I've also spoke with former UFC welterweight Brock Jardine. He went 0-2 in the UFC. And he's recently been released. His two fights were against Rick Story. Then he had the crazy submission loss to Kenny Robertson. But we also want to shout out MMA Victor. We've set up a new contest on there. So come and register MMA Victor, and you've got a chance to win 2 UFC tickets to an event of your choice. So come and check that out to find out more information.
Definitely, yeah. There are lots of pretty cool contests you can get yourself involved in on MMA Victor. You can get involved in a free contest for a shirt. I don't know if that's still going on. You can spend $1, you can spend $100. Whether you don't want to spend any money, just want to literally spend $1, or want to spend a little bit of money, MMA Victor is the place to do it at. Also, Jay, you're starting this show early stoppage. You've done a few episodes so far. What's going on with that, man?
I am so pleased with that right now. I know I've had Ray on, I've had you on, Jake, and I had Ramses on this week. I've got Patrick coming on next week. I am so excited because every single show I've put out has had over 50 views. I am absolutely delighted with that. It's just great fun, great laugh. This episode with Ramses was absolutely hilarious. And Patrick should be very fun too. I have no idea who's going to be on the week after. But let's take things one at a time. But yeah, really good show this week.
For sure. I haven't heard the Ramses episode yet, but I got to check that out. He's always a fun guy to talk to. Also, you can check out the MMA Roundtable, this show, every Thursday from 5 to 7 Eastern, 2 to 4 Pacific. You might notice we are doing today's show Wednesday, and that's just going to be a one-off sort of thing. And yeah, the MMA podcast, that's going to be every Friday night. We're doing a new time starting next week, every Friday night at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. Definitely check that out. We're going to have Mike Strock on next Friday. Looking forward to talking to him. He's a well-known MMA journalist. Also visit us on Twitter at the MMA Podcast. So enough with the formalities. We'll get straight to UFC 159. We'll talk about the just insanity that happened after the Bonehead of the Week. Actually, one of the news topics is, I want to ask you what you thought the craziest thing that happened was, but there were tons of, fight stoppages that shouldn't have been stopped, very strange injuries, whether it was to toes or thumbs. You had a weird voice come over the line at one point that no one really knows what it was. It was just this this satanic sounding voice. He had Bruce Buffer call out the wrong name. He was wearing a red suit. They were fighting in the home of the New Jersey Devils in the Prudential Center. I think some shit was up, but we'll talk about that later. What were your thoughts in the card in general? Did all of this, crazy stuff going on take away from the fights, or were the fights the thing that really stood out, Ray?
There was some fights that stood out, but there was a lot of I didn't hear the voice thing, but there was some very strange and unusual finishes. I think there was only one finish I disagreed with, though. I think the other finishes I agreed with, even though they were unusual.
It was my birthday, so of course this was going to be cursed. There's going to be crazy crap happening. I want to know when in the card this satanic voice was, because I didn't catch this one. Was it early or was it late?
I'll send you the YouTube video of it. Actually, it was when one of the fighters was in their corner. I couldn't let you know whether it was the main card or the prelims, but I'll send you the link. And there's literally just this voice going on in the background while the cornermen are talking to the fighters, and it's just like Express, and it's really loud, and it goes way louder than everybody. It was bizarre stuff. I'll send you a link after the show, and if you are listening now and want to find it, just literally search UFC 159 Satan voice, and you'll probably find it. But we will get to the main card fights. It was actually, even, kind of overlooking all the craziness, it was an amazing card. And the first fight on the main card was my favorite fight of the entire event. Pat Healy versus Jim Miller, and it wasn't just because I correctly called the underdog to win. It was exciting as hell. One fight of the night. Pat Healy won submission of the night too, so with those two bonuses, he was $135,000 richer. Sinks in the rear naked choke with less than a minute to go in the third round of the fight. What did you guys think of Healy versus Miller? And where does Healy go from here? He's obviously now vaulted himself in the top 10 of the UFC lightweight division.
Just want to correct you, it wasn't 135, it was 130, it was 65 per bonus, wasn't it?
Oh, wow, you're right, yeah, I failed at the math there.
Yeah, it was, I've been a big fan of Jim Miller for quite a while, and I think Jay will know this, I'm a huge fan of the lightweight division, it's probably my favourite division. This fight was fantastic, it was absolutely brilliant, and I was surprised that Healy won, but I was more surprised at how he won as well, because Jim Miller's proven himself to be very durable and very tough to finish, and the only person who's actually finished Jim Miller before this was Nate Diaz with that guillotine choke. But Pat Healy, everyone was saying that Pat Healy was a poor man's Jim Miller, but in the end, the way the fight played out, Jim Miller was a poor man's Pat Healy. It was just a fantastic back and forth fight. As and where to go from here, you're right, Pat Healy's now top 10, because for me, Jim Miller was top 10, so Pat Healy's now top 10, so you give him another top 10 guy. Josh Thompson's coming off a fantastic victory. I know they're both Strikeforce guys. Gil Melendez has just lost for the title. He's going to be dropping down. He's going to want to fight somebody. We know that the winner of Maynard and Grant's going to get the next title shot. But I'd be tempted to see Healy Thompson with the winner of that getting a title shot after Healy and after Grant and Maynard.
At the beginning of this week, I was confident. I was pretty confident that the way that everybody saw it was that Jim Miller was the rich man's Pat Healy. I'm going to go the opposite way round. However, at the beginning of this week, I was confident that it was the other way round, that Pat Healy was going to win this fight. So I think I put a $5 down on it. And when the fight came, I had so many people saying you're an idiot, you shouldn't have put the money on, that I started believing it myself. I was thinking, what have I done? And then the fight started, and it went exactly as I had planned. You shouldn't listen to what other people tell you. That's the bottom line. The fight was absolutely fantastic, and you guys said it best. It won fight of the night in submission of the night, so that says a lot.
For sure. We will move on to the next fight. Phil Davis taking on Vinny Magalhaes. I would pass it off to Ramses for a correct pronunciation, but he's not with us this evening. Davis looked pretty impressive, riding out to a 30-27, 30-27, 29-28 unanimous judges nod. I don't know who scored it 29-28, because I had all three rounds being pretty certainly 10-9 toward Phil Davis. Just really didn't mix it up with him much on the ground, which was wise of him, and kept his distance. Vinny just doesn't have the stand up yet to fight with these elite UFC guys, and he proved that. Maybe if he can sharpen that up, that like we saw in Fabricio Verdum, he might fare a little bit better, but he just didn't have any answers for Phil Davis on the feet.
I wasn't that impressed with Phil Davis, to be honest with you. Yeah, he won the fight, but his boxing was more as I know Jay will like to call this, and he'll probably agree, it was more stand and tag. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't an exciting style to watch. He was in and out, and he never looked like finishing Vinny. And Vinny's nowhere near a top 10 fighter. So really, for me to be impressed with Phil Davis, he should have got a stoppage in this fight. That was my opinion. I thought this was probably the least interesting fight on the main card.
Yeah, he could have done a little bit more. He could have really pushed the pace a little bit and tried to test Vinny and see how he's comfortable in deep waters. But yeah, this was a bit of a boring matchup. It would have been stylistically good had Vinny tried to work. I know it's weird to say this, but he should be working more on his grappling, as in the takedowns, or even he should have tried to pull guard. He didn't look like he committed to anything, and Phil Davis is always going to be able to keep it on the feet or take him down, but that's not where he wanted it. So yeah, as Ray said, it turned into a bit of a stand and tag matchup.
Sorry to jump in, Jake. So I wanted to say as well, just to pick up on what you said about the 10-9 scores. Again, I don't know who scored it to Vinny, but interestingly enough, Vinny actually tweeted out that he didn't know how he got around. He said, as far as he's concerned, he lost every single round, and it should have been 30-27 on all three scorecards, which I thought that was pretty good of him to admit that. I think that was the case. But yeah, the judge who gave that score needs his eyesight checking.
Yeah, it's definitely refreshing to hear that after, coming off a couple losses from the Diaz brothers where you heard them come up with every excuse in the book, from my fighter weighed 0.4 pounds over the amount he should have weighed, to, Thompson was scared of me, which is why he knocked me out. It's nice to see a guy be honest and say, look, I lost the fight, I shouldn't have won a round, I didn't win a round, and I'll come back stronger next time. It's not about making excuses about the past, it's about getting stronger and being a better fighter next time, and I think Vinny's got the right attitude there. We will move forward to Roy Nelson defeating Czech Congo. I think most of us thought that Roy would win a first round knockout because this guy, it's kind of crazy. He only gets in two different kinds of fights. That's it. He only wins first round knockouts or loses a one-sided judge's nod where he got the shit beat out of him. And it's surprising that Nelson himself didn't get knocked out. Congo wasn't going to bring the 15 minutes of pain, so Roy Nelson did what he does, and he knocked him out in the first round. Czech Congo apparently cut now. We'll get to that later on in the news portion. But what did you think of a fight, and what do you think is next for Roy Nelson? Dana White has come out saying that the next fight for Nelson is Mark Hunt or Daniel Cormier. I think most of us would much rather see Nelson Hunt than Nelson Cormier. I think Nelson Cormier would just take Nelson down and sort of keep him grounded with that top flight wrestling ability. And Nelson versus Hunt, I mean, come on, what a matchup. Those are the two big guts, the two hardest hitters in the heavyweight class. It would be a hell of a match. Plus, I kind of want to see Daniel move down to 205 sooner rather than later. Yeah, what did you guys think of Nelson versus Congo, and what do you think's next for Big Country?
First of all, I absolutely love Roy Nelson. I mean, the guy in that fight threw two punches. The first one was the overhand right, which dropped him. The second one was on the ground as it looked like Congo was going to get up. And, of course, then he went out. And if you notice, he actually stopped throwing punches because he realised he was out. So he actually stopped before the ref came in, which I really liked. But I just love his whole persona and the way he portrays himself and the kind of the character he plays. And he's on the right track. He's beating people and he's beating them exciting because we all love to see a finish. We talk about a stand and tag round fight, the fight before. This was the complete opposite. I mean, it was just fantastic to watch. As for what's next for him, I've read today that his management don't want him to fight Cormier because they said there's nothing in that fight for him, which I think is a bit ridiculous as Cormier's coming off a win over Frank Mir and Frank Mir beat Roy Nelson. So that seems to be a bit of ducking to me, which is a shame. But, I wouldn't mind seeing either of those fights, Nelson versus Hunt or Nelson versus Cormier. I think they'll both be exciting fights, but I do like the idea of Cormier dropping down to 205, like you said, Jake.
Yeah, the fight was kind of what people expected to happen. Nelson to land the big right and Congo to go out. I don't know what Congo's game plan was in that fight. I thought he had ways to win. and as you guys have said, he is going to get cut, and I think that's rightfully so. I think there was tools for him to win. You know, he is a kickboxer after all. He should be able to. All his game plan should have been was to gaffer tape his left hand to the left side of his head. And that's all he has to do to win this fight, was just to make sure that big right hand never landed, and it did straight away, and it was lights out. As for what's next for Nelson, Dana White is my bonehead of the week, and I'm going to get to that later. But really, Cormier or Hunt, Cormier just beat Frank Mir, so he should be either fighting John Jones or he should be looking at the top tier of the division. And Mark Hunt, yeah, that makes sense. But are you really overlooking JDS Hunt? Let's just get to that later. But I think Dana White's forgetting about some fights there.
Yeah, it's never a certainty when Dana says something at a press conference. So time will tell what exactly happens. Moving briskly on to the co-main event, Michael Bisping defeating Alan Belcher, the Brit, coming up big. What did you guys think of the fight? What do you think's next for Bisping, who was able to defeat Alan Belcher via another? We saw two technical decisions on the card. Luckily, both of them went the way they should have. But it was a shame with 30 seconds left in the fight, in a fight that Bisping was gonna win unless Belcher was able to pull out one of the greatest comeback knockouts of all time. Bisping unfortunately poked Belcher in the right eye, the eye that he's had problems with in the past. He actually had to get 8 stitches on his eyelid because it broke it open. Kind of gnarly, but it's not going to be anything that threatens Alan Belcher's career, fortunately. What did you guys think of Bisping versus Belcher?
I was really surprised at this fight. I mean, I had Bisping to win, and I had Bisping to win by decision, but I honestly thought Belcher would make more of a contest of it. And Belcher was never ever in this fight. I mean, Bisping completely outclassed him. I mean, it was unbelievably one-sided for two guys who, are probably in and around the top 10. Obviously, Bisping definitely is. I'd have thought Belcher's either just inside of the top 10 or just outside the top 10. But it was just, I couldn't believe the difference between the two guys, to be honest with you. It was just amazing how one-sided the fight was. I was really taken aback by how easy this fight was for Bisping. I actually thought the technical decision was right. The referee was right to stop the fight. The injury that Belcher had with the eye poke was awful. I mean, you can literally see he's bleeding from his eye, which is never a good sign. I enjoyed the interview afterwards with Bisping, where he talked about Alan, and because obviously there'd been a lot of hype in the build-up, and Bisping had talked a lot of smack about Belcher, which we know that's what he does anyway. And as much as I enjoyed that, I always like to see the respect given at the end, and he gave a lot of respect to Belcher, which I thought was good. And they obviously shook hands and hugged in the ring, which I thought was good as well. But as for what's next, Bisping is probably he is a top fighter, but he just doesn't crack the top 3 or top 4 guys. Unfortunately, he'll never fight for a title, but there is obviously fights out there for him. Cung Lee said he'd like to fight him. Rich Franklin's still talking about coming back. He's still a top fighter. Vanderlei Silva, he lost to Vanderlei Silva. That'd be a good matchup for him to rematch. There's lots of options for him. Even Hector Lombard, I know he lost his last fight, but he's still a pretty big name. A Bisping Lombard would be a good fight as well.
Man, there's a lot of interesting fights out there for Bisping. I can't deny that at all. As for the fight itself, yeah, I completely have to agree with you, Ray. I thought the fight was going to be competitive. I was actually thinking that if Belcher landed, that'd be it. Bisping's chin might not hold up, but Bisping is there. Bisping is fast. Bisping, he did what he wanted. I didn't expect that at all. Where does this put Bisping in the rankings? I think you've got to give him a fight. Above it all, you've got to give him a fight with Akami. Both these guys have been in that middleweight division for so long, and they've always managed to avoid each other. Why not? I mean, give Belcher Lombard. That's also... Belcher's always going to be in these exciting fights when he gets a chance. I think that fight's interesting, but I'd love to see Bisping, He can very easily, he could be at the top 10, top 5 forever if you just give him the guys who aren't number 1 or 2, like he lost to, who was it, Belfort, Sonnen. He'd probably lose to Silva, but not many other guys are going to be able to beat him that easily. He's always going to be a solid gatekeeper, and I think he'll be top 5 whilst he can. Yeah,
yeah, that's a excellent breakdown. Belcher just is one of these guys who seems to get close over and over and over and over, and then you throw an elite guy in front of him and he isn't able to do it. I like the Bisping versus Okami potential matchup. There's a lot of things that could happen for Bisping next. Will he ever fight for a title? We will see. And lastly, at UFC 159, we had Jon Jones defend his belt against Chael Sonnen for the 5th time. Jones really went out there and impressed the shit out of a lot of us, because we all agreed, what's the one thing that Sonnen could have a chance at defeating Jones from? His wrestling. We've never seen anyone test his wrestling, sort of like JDS going into the second Kane fight. Yes, he had fought guys like Bader, Vlad, Rashad Evans, but none of them were really brave enough to get inside the Jones rage and really go for that much wrestling. I mean, I think when he fought Rashad Evans, Rashad, I think, shot 2 takedowns, one in the 3rd and one in the 4th, and that was it. Jones went out there and out-wrestled Sonnen, picked Sonnen up, put him on his ass 3 times, and was able to finish the fight with 30 seconds to go. Kind of the thing about the fight everyone was talking about, though. In the first round, he breaks his toe, very gnarly. It was a compound fracture. The toe was, it was like Kevin Ware's leg, just a very, very brutal break. People are saying if Sonnen was able to survive that last 20 seconds, the doctors wouldn't have let Jones come into the second round, no matter how much Jones says, my corner would have made me go back out there. I'm a soldier. I'm a warrior. Yeah, your corner can say whatever they want to say. The doctor's not going to let you fight on that toe. The doctor's going to rush you to the hospital to get it fixed. So I am kind of cross. I was rooting for Chael Sonnen, and it would have been awesome if he would have survived that 20 seconds. But as a fight fan, the way Jon Jones was dominating Chael Sonnen, that would have just been another BS loss on Jones' record. I mean, he's already got one BS loss from beating the snot out of Matt Hamill and getting a loss. And as much as I would have liked to see Chael get the belt, he would have been getting the belt for getting his ass beaten. And I don't think Chael would want it that way. Obviously, Jones wouldn't. And I think the right thing happened with Jones. I do think it was an early stoppage, but I'm glad the early stoppage happened, because Chael did not deserve to win that fight after getting his ass beat. And I'm saying that as a huge Chael fan. What did you think of the fight, the early stoppage? I guess we'll talk about the fight first and go around the round table one more time to talk about what's next for either guy after. Ray, what'd you think?
The fight was what it was. It was what it was always going to be, because Chael Sonnen shouldn't really have been in the same cage as Jon Jones. Chael Sonnen is the same as Nick Diaz for me. They're both fantastic at promoting fights, and that's why they're there for. But Sonnen shouldn't have been in that fight, just like Diaz shouldn't have been in the fight with GSP. The most exciting thing about the Jon Jones-Chael Sonnen fight was the build-up. And I hate to say that, because I know we've got some Sonnen fans as part of our team, but there's other people out there that should have been fighting for that fight, fighting for that belt, and it shouldn't have been Chael Sonnen, and it showed. I mean, he lasted 4.5 minutes. I didn't think it was an early stoppage. I thought he wasn't intelligently defending himself. He turned around, he'd turtled up, and he was looking for a way out. He'd given up. He didn't want to fight anymore, because Jones was too powerful. And I don't think Sonnen complained about the stoppage either, from what I can gather. I do think if he had hung on, he would have won because of the toe, which would have been a shame. But it wouldn't have been bullshit, because an injury is an injury. But it would have been a shame, because obviously that's the only way you can win that fight is by a freakish injury. But yeah, I just fed up now. We need number one contenders. We need people who have won fights in that division and worked their way up the rankings. So Chael Sonnen and Nick Diaz were both coming off losses, and they both didn't put up fights. Nick Diaz GSP was a horrible fight. Nick Diaz didn't do anything in that fight. And then obviously Sonnen Jones was incredibly one-sided. I want to see number one contenders fighting for titles. We've had Johnny Hendricks on the sidelines. Henderson was on the brink of a title, but obviously he's lost to Machida now, so he's going to have to wait longer. I'd rather have seen Jones versus Henderson. I'd rather have seen GSP versus Hendricks. But that's just me.
I do agree that we've had these weird holds up in the division. We've got Gustafsson now on the rise, but really, does he deserve it? I mean, Rashad's coming off that weird little nog loss. And then you've got people like Machida and Henderson, who both of them could have easily got the shot. And now we've also got Cormier coming along. So why would there was this 6-month hold up? But this always happens when you get something like a TUF championship season. A lot of crazy stuff goes down, and then you start questioning whether the fight's even going to happen. I mean, we had the hold up of the heavyweight division whilst it was Kane, JDS, not Kane JDS, it's JDS versus Brock. These sort of things do happen. Also with the Koscheck GSP thing that played along, and then it's just going to happen. It's a part of the sport, especially when you've got this reality TV show going on. What did I think of the fight? The UFC did a great job of promoting it to make it look like Chael Sonnen had a chance, but he didn't at the end of the day, and it was a shame to see Sonnen lose. And yeah, I think he was 20 seconds away from being the next light heavyweight champion, but Jones would have killed him in a rematch, and it just saved the division some stalling, really.
Certainly. And talking about what's next for either guy, for Sonnen, I think he's got to move back down to middleweight for his next few fights. Jones is a much younger guy, and I think with his performance, Sonnen showed that he's never going to be the champion at 205, but he's still younger than Anderson Silva. He still has a chance for that middleweight championship. Just go back to 185, wait it out. I think Sonnen Weidman would be a great match. Maybe Weidman loses to Silva, or maybe Weidman beats Silva, and in 3 or 4 years, Sonnen gets himself back up to be a middleweight championship contender. Who knows? As far as what's immediately next for him, he called out Vanderlei Silva on UFC Tonight. I don't know if I like that style, because I know Sonnen's just going to take Vanderlei down. Vanderlei's not going to have much of a chance in that fight. I would love to see Vitor versus Chael. I think Belfort would make that a little more interesting. But, Chael's calling out Vanderlei. I'm kind of shaky on that. As far as Jones goes, he said he wants Gustafsson next. And I guess Gustafsson deserves it, but at the same time, I don't think any of us think he has a shot. Really, the only person I see giving John Jones problems at 205 is Cormier, and I'd like to see him move down, get one tune-up fight, maybe schedule Jones Gustafsson along with Machida Cormier, and the winner of Machida Cormier gets a title shot after Jones Gustafsson. And after Jones beats Gustafsson and beats the winner of Lyoto and Cormier, he has unequivocally cleaned out the light heavyweight class and can move up to heavyweight. But, with this toe thing, we don't know when he's going to be back. So a lot of things to ponder there. Ray?
Apparently, believe it or not, I've read today the toe wasn't broken, and he's due to be training again 6 to 8 weeks. It's not as bad as
really?
That's what I've read today, and the toe looked awful. But going back on, obviously, I'll start with Chael Sonnen. I don't think Sonnen will ever fight for a title, and I don't think he'll be fighting in 3 or 4 years because of his age. That's just me personally. But I think there's still fights out there for Sonnen, and there's still super fights. I don't mind seeing Sonnen versus Vanderlei Silva. Vanderlei Silva made a name for himself in the old days of taking on wrestlers and kneeing the crap out of them. So, he won't lie down for Sonnen, and he'll make it a fight. And wherever the fight goes, he's one of those guys that even off his back he's throwing strikes, which Sonnen isn't used to fighting that style. So I wouldn't mind seeing that. I still think Sonnen would win, but I think it'd be exciting. But I think the fight I'd really like to see for Chael Sonnen is, like you said, the Vitor Belfort fight. Because Vitor Belfort is so explosive with his striking, and he's not a bad wrestler. Not obviously as good as Sonnen, but he's good enough to make it an even contest. And he's got brutal knockout power with his hands and with his feet, as we saw against Bisping. So if I could choose his next opponent, I'd go for Vitor Belfort. I wouldn't even mind seeing him rematching Michael Bisping, because their last fight was razor close. And as a main event, Bisping versus Sonnen over 5 rounds, I think that's a different contest completely, and I wouldn't mind seeing that. For John Jones, I think I'd like to see Cormier drop down to 205, and I wouldn't mind seeing Jones fight Cormier next. But if it's not going to be Cormier, that 4 you said, I like that 4. So if I could choose, I'd go for Bisping versus John Jones versus Cormier and Machida versus Gustafsson. So I'd do it a little bit differently too, but I think they're the right four for John Jones for the light heavyweight title.
Right, Jake said something about cleaning out a division. A division is rarely ever actually officially cleared out. There's a few names you forgot to mention. They will always be put into question, and that is people like Phil Davis, Glover Teixeira. You guys both forgot about him. And there's other guys on the horizon at all times, even people like Manawa. You never know what can happen to these guys. I don't really know where the division goes right now. I think Cormier should probably get the next shot, but it doesn't look like they're willing to give it to him. I think Machida probably will be next, but it should really be Gustafsson. Originally, Gustafsson was going to fight Gegard Mousasi, of course, so maybe he's got one more fight till he... Maybe the UFC is thinking he should have one more fight or something like that. I don't really know who to give him. Maybe the Little Nog, that's quite easy. Maybe Machida's next for John Jones, although John Jones doesn't like that fight, whatever, it's not his call. He's a champion who should be fighting whoever's up against him. Henderson should still be in the mix. All I know is that Chael Sonnen wants to stay at 205. So the idea of people like Bisping and things, he's not going to take him. So maybe, I think the Vanderlei Silva fight might happen, and maybe even Forrest Griffin somewhere down the line.
Yeah, I mean, just the thing with Chael moving up. I like Chael's matchups against the top 10 guys in the welterweight or in the middleweight class, but when he goes up to 205, there's just a lot of beasts there, and I don't know, he might actually do more than I'm expecting to. Just the way he got manhandled at 205 by John Jones really said something. But Jones manhandles everyone at 205, so it's not really that crazy that he did that. I guess unless either of you guys have anything to add on UFC 159, we will move on to Guess That Tweet, the tweet game show where I spurred out 5 different tweets tweeted out by various UFC fighters, and you guys have to guess who it was. We got Ray the Noble against Jay the Cheater. It's going to be a head-to-head matchup this week, which will be pretty interesting. MMA Mental's going to get the point, whatever happens. Ray, you have one more win than Dave, and Dave drowned 17 years ago or something. This is sad that you only have one more point than Dave, but no better chance than today, because I have a feeling Jay is going to lose on purpose, so we stopped calling him a cheater. So let us get to the tweets. Tweet number 1. I've been waiting for someone to walk out in a robe, so that's pretty cool. Hashtag UFC 159, obviously referring to Chael Sonnen's walkout, Rocky style, in the blue robe. The tweet is, I've been waiting for someone to walk out in a robe, so that's pretty cool. Was it Joseph Benavidez, Dana White, Ian McCall, or Darren Cruikshank?
Am I first? Sorry, the run sheet. Okay, I'm first.
Yeah.
I will go with Ian McCall, strictly because he tweets a lot.
I'll go with Joseph Benavidez.
Well, it wasn't Dana, it wasn't Cruikshank, it was not Ian McCall, it was Joseph Benavidez tweeting that out. Ray with the early lead, 1-0. Alright, the next tweet. You see the size of the...
Before you read out the next tweet, could I just say that for my next lot of guesses, I'll just guess the same as Jay for every single one?
Ooh, well, you've got to guess first for some of them. We are still doing.
Whoever's leading has to guess first.
All right. So the second tweet. You see the size of the ref? LOL. I hope he can break it up. Was it Dana White, Ronda Rousey, Miesha Tate, or Joseph Benavidez?
I'll go for Ronda Rousey.
Could you repeat the names again, please?
Dana White, Ronda Rousey, Miesha Tate, Joseph Benavidez.
I'm going to go with Dana.
It was UFC president Dana White tweeting, you see the size of the ref? I hope he can break it up. So we got to tie it 1-1.
What the hell?
What, you got a point?
Yeah, I'm trying to get it wrong. I got it wrong.
Oh, yeah. All right. This one. Hashtag UFC 159, a series of awkward events. That's it. UFC 159, a series of awkward events. Kind of summarizes the event pretty well. Was it Ian McCall, Joseph Benavidez, Darren Cruikshank, or Tim Kennedy?
I'll go for Darren Cruikshank. Oh, it's your go first, Jay, isn't it? Sorry, Jay.
I don't mind. I'll go with Ian McCall.
All right, it was not McCall or Cruikshank or Tim Kennedy. It was Joseph Benavidez tweeting UFC 159, a series of awkward events. And if you'll notice, all of these tweets are UFC 159 related, which actually that gives the point to me, which makes it tied 1-1 apiece. Wow. So let's get into the last two tweets. If I can stump both of you on one of them, then I'll be in overtime. All right. Tweet number 4. Watching UFC 159. Also, check out Ronda Rousey making Jim Norton almost jizz from an armbar attempt. And then it links to a YouTube video. Was it Joseph Benavidez, Opie Hughes, Anthony Cumia, or Colin Quinn? And you all might be wondering, Opie Hughes, Anthony Cumia, Colin Quinn. The video is of Ronda Rousey trying to armbar Jim Norton on the Opie and Anthony show, and Opie, Anthony, and Colin Quinn are all regular guests. So is it Opie, Anthony, Colin Quinn, or Joseph Benavidez, who have thrown out there as an option on every single tweet?
I don't know any of these guys, so I'll just go for Colin, whoever what his name was.
I also don't know any of these guys, so I'm going to go with Joseph Benavidez.
Alright, it was not Colin Quinn, it was not Joseph Benavidez, it was Opie Hughes tweeting that out from the Opie and Anthony show. Yeah, so it looks like I'm leading the way with 2. And if neither of you guys can guess this right, then I win this week's Guess That Tweet, and it will be a marvelous day. Alright, tweet number 5. When I was in New York, I had a photographer stop me and ask to take a picture of just my socks and shoes. I wonder why. And attached is a Instagram picture of the fighter wearing very colorful shoes and socks. So it's when I was in New York, I had a photographer stop me and ask to take a picture of just my shoes and socks. Wonder why, and they're wearing crazy shoes and socks, and it's a picture of it. Was it Misha Tate, Jason Mayhem Miller, Joseph Benavidez, or Ronda Rousey?
My first, yeah?
Yes.
I'll take Misha Tate.
I was going to take her. Let's go for Jason Mayhem Miller.
Alright, well, it was not Ronda Rousey. It was not Joseph Benavidez. It was not Jason Mayhem Miller either. It was Jay, which puts his point total to 2 as well. So it's 2 points for myself and Jay, 1 point for Ray. So how we'll do this one, I'll have both of you guess on this final overtime tweet. If Jay gets it right, he wins this week. If neither of you get it right, I win this week. And if Ray gets it right, then I'll have to dig up an additional tweet, because that...
how many options is that?
There's 4.
So why don't you have Jay pick 2 options, you get the remaining 2.
Sure. Alright. So, if Jay picks 2, if either one he picks is correct, he wins the game.
That's correct.
Does that mean I'm a cheat if I get it right?
Yes, it does.
So what am I trying to do? Get it right?
You're trying to convince us that you're not a cheater. I'm sorry, but quit telling the ref you're injured. He has to stop the fight after that. Hashtag UFC 159. So it's, I'm sorry, but quit telling the ref you're injured. He has to stop the fight after that. Tim Kennedy, Darren Cruikshank, Joseph Benavidez, Cub Swanson.
It's not going to be Joseph Benavidez. Who were all I heard was Cub Swanson. Who were the first 2?
Tim Kennedy and Darren Cruikshank.
I know that you've said Darren Cruikshank a lot as well, so I'm going to go with Darren Cruikshank and Cub Swanson.
All right, so you're going with Cruikshank and Swanson, and I get Tim Kennedy and Benavidez?
Apparently so.
All right, well, it was not Darren Cruikshank. It was not Joseph Benavidez.
Oh, of course not.
It was Cub Swanson. Jay, you win again.
Oh.
And you should probably be banned from the tweet game, because it's funny, you went from John Fitch to Uriah Faber to Evan Tanner, because I was going to murder you, and then you were John Jones / Anderson Silva for a while. You were on top and everything, but now you're just Sean Shirk. You're a cheater, and everybody knows it.
Now he's Dana White. He owns the whole damn show.
Fuck you on about? How I didn't? You got that was too easy. You had Darren Cruikshank. I think that was an early answer. Darren Cruikshank, wasn't it? Was that the right answer early on in the show?
I think you've won like 6 times in a row now.
Look, oh man, Joseph Benavidez wasn't going to be the answer because you've already had him. It's just, why was he in every single answer? I'm not even going to argue my case in this one. This was pathetically easy this week, just like last week. Probably
pathetically
like
easy, which is why the host made it into the overtime.
Yeah, well, that's because Ray's on. How many wins have you got, Ray?
I don't cheat.
He has, he has 2 overall wins. So see, Ray doesn't cheat, so he has 2 wins in 28 attempts. You cheat, so you have 6 wins and 6 attempts.
I don't have.
I cheat. I'm just rubbish at cheating.
Jay, I think I'm going to make you host Guess That Tweet the rest of the month, just so you don't have a chance to cheat anymore.
That is fine with me, man. But that's just because you're afraid that I'm going to catch up with your score, and I know that's the truth.
You're never going to catch up to it, son. Next week, P Money's going to host. We'll have the full roundtable back. So I'll bump it up to 11, and I'll call Jay a lot of names. So tune in next week. Let's get straight to the news. UFC 159. I want to talk about how bizarre it was. It's the weirdest card in recent memory. I mean, I mentioned a lot of stuff, a fight ending because a guy dislocated his thumb. You had John Jones' toe. You had 2 fights get called to bring it to a technical decision. One of them being a BS call by Kevin Mulhall, who, after a fighter was poked in the eye, immediately asks, "Can you see?" The fighter says, "No," meaning, "No, I can't see right now. Give me 5 minutes." And Mulhall says, "All right, fight over," which was pretty ridiculous. There was obviously the crazy voice in the background. Buffer was wearing a red suit for some reason, which kind of added to the whole Satan theme of the thing. He called Jim Miller the winner of the fight he lost. Like I mentioned, you're in the home of the New Jersey Devils. It was a full moon. How much weirder can things get? What moment or moments really stood out to you? For me, it's the Buffer mess up, because he has such an Chris has tweeted in saying ban him from the tweet game. If you have any thoughts on what we should do with Jay for cheating so often at the tweet game, please tweet us your comments or suggestions. Tweet us at the MMA Podcast, and we'll read the best ones on air, and maybe we can get Jay to spin a wheel of punishment type thing for being a cheater. Oh, actually, I did not mention, Jay started up a Facebook status saying that, all right, Jake Walters and Ray Thompson, everyone on the round table are accusing me of cheating. I want you I want my closest friends to tell them that I'm not a cheater, because I'm not a cheater. And literally all of Jay's friends, so the guys on the MMA Podcast Roundtable think I'm cheating. Can some of my close friends reassure them I'm not a cheat? I can't read all of them, but there were a lot of friends of yours who threw you under the bus. Jonathan Daw saying that he was in a homosexual relationship with you and you cheated on him with another man. Your friend Nick Bethry said he's played Go Fish with you. He's still looking for some cards. He couldn't move occasionally on computer games, somehow started 7 points down, and Madden not sharing the button configuration. His own girlfriend said he was playing Mario Kart with a 6-year-old and took great joy in beating him, so I can say he probably would cheat. Man, your buddy Gareth says you're friends of great game theorists and you're a big cheater. So yeah, all of your friends think you're a cheater, so you are a big-time cheater. But yeah, UFC 159, what moment stood out to you, Ray?
It was a really strange event. I think the moment that got me the most, that annoyed me the most, was the OSP Jean Vellante fight, because that fight shouldn't have been called. He should have been given a few minutes. He probably would have only been needed 2 minutes and it'd been fine to fight. The ref jumped the gun. So for that reason, that moment, for the wrong reasons, that moment stood out to me for the wrong reasons.
Thanks for doing that, Ray. Now everybody's going to think I'm a cheater or something. Anyway, yeah, the card was absolutely crazy. I don't know which moment stood out. I think Bruce Buff has messed up like twice in about 3 weeks now, saying that Johnny Hendricks was the main event against Condit, and then this Healy. I think even he was surprised that Healy won. He clearly didn't have it written down on his card. Clearly, if Ramses was here, he would have shouted that was at work, and that just Jim Miller thought was in on the work and didn't expect Healy to be as good as he was. I don't know. The craziest moment of the card, yeah, probably the OSP eye poke, and probably not actually. I'm going to go with the fact there was 2 technical decisions. First of all, it's rare to get 1. You had 2. That's just absurd.
Yeah, that's mental. No one's going to jump in and say MMA mental. Come on, guys. Step your games up. All right. Another weird circumstance at UFC 159. It didn't happen on fight night, but today most of the UFC world found out that it turns out that Chick Congo has been cut from the UFC. I don't know if the UFC has come out with an official press release yet, but his profile has been erased from the UFC.com site, which 99% of the time is an indication that the fighter has been cut. Ariel Helwani actually recently tweeted out that Congo was given the option for a 4-fight contract before UFC 159, and he turned it down. Apparently Congo thinking that he was going to beat Nelson, and that after he beat Nelson that would warrant him more money. Obviously things didn't go out the way Chick Congo wanted him to. He will be cut. He's a great heavyweight, so he will be signed by either the World Series of Fighting or Bellator. I'm guessing the World Series of Fighting, because Bellator has sort of shied away from a lot of these recent UFC cuts, sort of going after new up-and-coming talent, while the World Series of Fighting has sort of assumed that role of taking on cut UFC fighters. Should Chick Congo have gotten the axe, Jay?
It's a weird situation. I heard this first from MMA Mental. I think that was probably because I tweeted it out myself. I found out from another site and decided that MMA Mental needs to get on this news. It's weird. I think maybe he wants to retire. Maybe that's the reason he didn't accept the contract. I'm not really sure. I can't give an honest opinion, but I think he's pretty much reached what he can do in his career. If he wants to go to Bellator, he'd be easily one of their top heavyweights. But he isn't the most entertaining fighter, so whether Bellator would actually sign him up, that's another question. But yeah, I think he overlooked Roy Nelson, and he paid for it. His striking needs to sharpen up. He needs to stop working all this wrestling training and start getting back to basics.
With regards to Congo being cut, I wasn't really that fussed. Like Jay said, he's not an exciting fighter. He hasn't been an exciting fighter for quite a while now, and I won't miss watching him fight. I was disappointed when John Fitch got cut. I'm not bothered about Congo getting cut. Me and Jay had the privilege of meeting Congo, and he's one of the unnicest fighters I think I've ever met. So I won't be. It couldn't, as they say, it couldn't have happened to a nicer person. Talk about someone who's got no time for the fans. So it's not a disappointment to see him go. And I've seen him on a couple of occasions, and he just doesn't. That's the vibe he gives off. And he did last year when we were in Sweden. I'm sure Jay will back me up on that one. The Bellator one's strange because, like you said, they don't seem to want these ex-UFC guys, and they go for these up-and-coming guys. Yet they've just signed Vladimir Matyushenko. So I don't really know what goes on over at Bellator when it comes to signing the new fighters, to be honest with you, because I'd have thought John Fitch would have made more sense than signing Matyushenko, unless they don't want someone who's going to completely dominate, and Fitch probably would have done that. Mind you, Fitch Askren would have been a fantastic fight. I could see him going World Series of Fight, but with him being European fight, maybe he'll end up at Cage Warriors, because obviously they picked up Che Mill, so they're obviously in the market for big fighters as well. So there's another option for him.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point about Fitch and Bellator. Bellator turned down a lot of money in not signing Fitch. I mean, think about the amount of MMA fans that would tune in to Spike to watch Fitch versus Askren. I mean, there would be a crazy amount of people. Just don't, maybe Rebney has a personal thing against Fitch. It can't really be because he's boring, because, you look at his current champion, who is somehow manages to be even more boring than Fitch. We will see where Congo ends up. One last news topic before we get to the bonehead of the week, but before we address it, Chris tweeted in and wanted to know. I have no idea what he's talking about, so Ray, I hope you have an idea. Chris says, anyway, can you ask Ray to explain the Ray rips on the mic during Belcher versus Bisping? Do you have any idea what he's saying? The Ray rips on the mic?
No.
All right, well, Chris, you are not making any sense to Ray. He said, can you ask Ray to explain the Ray rips in all caps on the mic during Belcher Bisping? Weird. All right, Brian.
What does rips mean?
RIPS, Ray rips on the mic during Belcher Bisping. It made zero sense to me, and seeing as it makes no sense to anybody else on the show, we'll move on to Brian Caraway convincing Dana White to up the bonuses from $50,000 to $65,000. Apparently Caraway was just hassling him over and over, and apparently this is going to net an additional $1.5 million over the next X amount of time, because it's $15,000 per bonus, so with four bonuses, that's an extra $60,000 per event, and that money definitely adds up. I personally, I'm the first one to call out a work, because I think a lot of things in the UFC are legit. I don't know how legit this story is. Part of me just thinks that maybe the UFC and Dana White feel bad for Brian Caraway, and they want to, kind of up people liking him a little more, because I was talking about this during UFC 159. Brian Caraway is the most hated fighter in the world that's not a top flight guy. I mean, you have guys who are really hated, like Tito Ortiz, like John Jones even. Usually guys who are really I can't even say the word right now. Vehemently hated are very good fighters. He's the most hated, irrelevant fighter in MMA history, and I sort of think that the UFC is just trying to give him a little boost, because it's kind of a three-sided thing actually. A, Caraway is this guy who's always acting full of himself. Oh yeah, this and that. That doesn't help. The fact he dates Miesha Tate. Look, 99% of MMA fans out there are straight jealous that you pulled down Miesha Tate, and they haven't, me included. And third off, what I think is the most damning one, I think people would be fine with Caraway if it wasn't for those comments he made about Ronda Rousey. Just about, beat her up. It was the worst thing he could have said. What do you think about Caraway convincing White to up the bonuses?
I don't really have an opinion on this, to be honest with you. It's the first I've heard when I saw this run sheet. It just reminded me of when I was in Sweden, because he had the bonuses in Sweden, and he upped them for that event, and he said it was because of Diego Brandao. So maybe they're just going to pick a different fighter for each event and blame it on them for upping the bonuses. Because in Sweden, he actually said at the press conference, Diego harassed me to up the bonuses, so you can all thank him for the extra bonuses. So I don't know what to say. I've never really had a problem with Caraway personally.
Spoken like a real un-Tate fan. What is it? An anti-Tate fan, whatever. It's a weird situation. You got a guy who's trying to ask for more money. If he goes out there and puts on an exciting fight, then yeah, give him the extra money in the back room and don't mention it. But you don't have to do it. It's not part of your job to say. It's not in a contract to say you're going to get X amount for it. You're going to get a bonus. They will hand out bonuses. It doesn't say how much it's going to be. He is probably the most hated fighter, but it's not his fault. He's picked up a very nice girlfriend. Fair play on him. Yeah, maybe as Ray said, maybe different each time they're going to blame someone else, but I don't know. This is the first I've really heard of it.
Yeah, and you're saying it's not Caraway's fault. It is Caraway's fault. Caraway, in the build-up to Miesha Tate versus Ronda Rousey, said a lot of bad. Caraway, I'm reading an excerpt from a news story. Caraway took to Twitter on Friday night, having a meltdown about beating up Rousey for challenging Miesha Tate and saying that he would break her arm and knock her teeth down her throat. You're a man, and you're saying that you want to break a woman's arm and knock her teeth down her throat? You're a piece of shit, period. I don't care about the amount of apologies you want to come out with, etc., etc. You're a piece of shit, and that's not going to change your public opinion in a lot of people's eyes. Look, I've actually talked to Brian Caraway. I did an interview with Tate and Caraway back when I was doing MMA at work. Tate seemed great. Caraway seemed like a nice guy. I'm not interested in ever having Caraway on the MMA podcast. It's just something you don't say, and when you say it, it says a lot about your character. And we will move on to the bonehead of the week. Are you guys ready for the bonehead?
I'm ready.
All right, a little bit of a delay there, but let's do it. Bonehead of the week. We will get straight into it. My bonehead is the UFC operations staff at UFC 159. I actually was pretty critical about it and saw an article by Dr. Johnny Benjamin, who I usually don't agree with this guy, but he made some really good points, saying that what the UFC did was so exorbitantly dumb. Literally your best fighter, your young best fighter, when it comes to listing guys like how much money will I be making in the future off X fighter, Jon Jones far and away leads the pack. He's young, he's the champion, he's dominant, he's going to be around for a while, he's going to be the face of the UFC for the next 10 years. And he gets a gnarly toe injury. I mean, you look at it, it's horrible because his toe is literally pointed like a different direction. It's bloody. It's just tendon damage. I'm shocked that there's not a fracture, and I'm actually a little bit cynical of that, maybe thinking that his camp's just trying to underplay the injury. But there was definitely a lot of damage there. There was a lot of damage. And the fact that not only did they have Jon Jones stick around to talk to Rogan, which I do understand because they had just found the injury, like literally Rogan standing there with the microphone as Jones looks down and goes, "Oh," and sees his toe, which it was a ballsy move by Rogan to kind of stick around and have him sit down on a stool and talk to him. Jones was acting loopy as hell at all the post-fight interviews. He was obviously in shock. So the fact that they not only kept him around for that, they brought Jones to the post-fight press conference. Are you kidding me? With an injury like that, especially with a guy who's going to be making your organization's billions, you're going to risk the health of his foot for a post-fight presser? I mean, come on, your feet are your base, your feet and your big toe. There is not anything more crucial for balance than your big toe. It was just such a boneheaded move to kind of say, oh yeah, the toe, we'll wrap it up and we'll do his interviews and we'll send him off to the hospital. I think they sent Jones off maybe 15-20 minutes into the post-fight presser. And I know I'm going on forever, but this was just disgusting, them ignoring the health of Jon Jones to ask him a few questions. That was pathetic. And whoever was in charge of making the call to keep Jones around instead of send him to the hospital, I don't know if it was Dana, don't know if it was Shelby, don't know if it was Fertitta, don't know if it was just the operations staff, but somebody deserves a stern talking to, because that was dumb, and they're my bonehead of the week.
My bonehead is Dana White. Dana White said a few things this week. Well, he always says something stupid, but it's just whether you remember them or not. Alright, his points this week, there are two separate interviews. He said one thing: next for Nelson is Cormier or Hunt. So that, I'm going to just say what he said first of all. The next thing he said is if JDS beats Hunt, he'll get the next title shot. So right, this leads me on to quite a few new questions. Firstly, Cormier is not even being considered for a 205-pound title shot. He's going to apparently fight Rory Nelson. Why? Why is he... This fight is interesting. A lot of fans are questioning it, but all of a sudden, no, it's not in the works or anything. Number two, Dana's overlooking Mark Hunt. Because what happens if Mark Hunt wins? As he said himself, next for Nelson is Cormier or Hunt. Is this with Cormier? Is this with Hunt winning or losing? Does either way he have to fight Nelson, or what? What is going on in his mind? Question number three. Has Dana forgot he said Verdum gets the next title shot provided he beats Big Nog? Another statistic for you is everybody who has finished Big Nog has gone on to fight for a world title, or I think it's almost immediately. I think Frank Mir is Brock Lesnar straight after. Cain Velasquez, he fought Brock Lesnar straight after, and then Frank Mir beat Big Nog. He replaced Overeem. So yeah, if you finish Big Nog, you get the next title shot. That is admitted. Number four, if Hunt wins, does he still have to fight Roy Nelson? As that kind of alludes to point two. Dana's overlooking Hunt. Five, when will Dana White just come out and admit a Bigfoot versus Kane is just a big joke, and they reveal the true opponent? Because let's be honest, Bigfoot versus Kane is uninteresting to just about everybody, so we need to find out who the real opponent is, because I've had enough of this joke. It's just complete, it's just a joke. What are the UFC even thinking that that's going to be a fun rematch? And so yeah, Dana, for those 2 points, asks a lot of stupid questions. For this week, Dana White is my bonehead.
My bonehead is a lot simpler than your two boneheads. It's just Kevin Mulhall. Everyone saw it. It was reffing for the OSP Jean Vellante fight. Jean Vellante gets poked in the eye. We've seen it 100 times if you watch MMA. It's not nice, but it happens. So you give the guy a few moments to recover. He blinks it out. He works out what is going on, and he gets his vision back, and he fights on. Can you see? No. Right, I'm calling the fight. It was literally 10 seconds after the eye poke. It was just ridiculous. So for that reason, my bonehead of the week is the referee Kevin Mulhall.
Yeah, I got to give it to Kevin. You know, you've apparently done this for a long time. So to make that big of a blunder, I mean, when a guy gets poked, you're supposed to ask him if he can carry on. If he says no, you give him 5 minutes. If needed, you call in the doctor too to look at a cut or his eye or whatever. It was pretty standard, Kevin asking, can you see? Because I figured Kevin was just trying to figure out, alright, do I start the fight back up now, or do I begin the 5-minute break? Yes, can you see? Gian Vellante says no, seemingly to start his 5 minutes. Fight over. What? That's literally like, I don't know. It's there's no metaphor I can draw from another sport because it's that insane. Kevin Mulhall wins bonehead for me.
Yeah, I think that's not even a common mistake. Every fighter should be aware that you're supposed to give time, and if you're not supposed to give time, why does every other referee do it? So yeah, I have to agree with Ray on this one. That's the bonehead.
My vote's irrelevant, but on the two stories that you gave us, the War and Peace stories, I'm going to go for UFC operations. For
sure, yeah, that was stupid. Them just basically keeping John in limbo while he needed medical attention. The story from Stitch Duran is they wrapped it up in tape and put it in a boot until it got to the hospital. Great going, guys. Alright, last few news topics before we send it out on this snappy edition of the MMA Roundtable, only an hour in now. I wanted to ask you guys about Rich Franklin saying he's eyeing a return for this year. Doesn't know who he's going to fight yet, but wants to fight in 2013. simply put, should Rich Franklin come back or retire? I'm honestly cross on this. Part of me thinks he should retire, but you know what? He did win his last fight. He did look decent against Vanderlei. Or wait, no, his last fight was when he got knocked the fuck out against Kung Lee. Yeah, that was something that Kung's got such an arsenal that could happen with anybody. I don't think Franklin challenges for the title again, but you can't really use that criteria thing about whether a guy should retire or not, because there are plenty of UFC guys who I don't think are ever going to get a title but still deserve their spot in the UFC. So, I mean, you know, Rich isn't punchy whatsoever. He's got his wits about him. I have no problem with him coming back. What do you guys think?
It's a dilemma, you know, how much punishment does the human body want to take? When I was training kickboxing, and I wasn't really, you know, I think this is back, I think I watched UFC 103, Belfort versus Franklin. I was confident that I could beat Rich Franklin personally with my skill set, and I haven't trained for about 2 years, but I still think stylistically I'd love to fight him. So yeah, maybe I should try and book myself a fight win with Rich Franklin, see how well I fare.
Dana White, if you're listening, please make the fight. It'll at least make him stop cheating at the tweet game.
Yeah, might come back with a few injuries as well. Should he come back or retire? It's up to him, man. The Vanderlei Silva fight was good. The Kung Lee fight was a surprise. He's doing well up to that point. I think he's still got it in him. Yeah, there are still fights for him out there. Maybe Stan versus Franklin, Belcher versus Franklin. That'll come full circle almost with the Ken Shamrock, in my opinion. That will be the young gun. It's just like Rich Franklin was against Ken Shamrock, and Belcher's kind of the young gun, and they both have very stylistical. He can fight anyone and I'll be happy. He's just a nice fighter, to be honest.
I'm of the stance that if Rich Franklin wants to continue fighting, I've got no problem watching him fight. I think he's always been an exciting fighter. I've always enjoyed watching him fight. His last fight was obviously brutal with the knockout, but that can happen to anybody, and you shouldn't base it on that one fight, because before that he's had great fights. So yeah, if Rich Franklin says he wants to still fight on, I want to watch him fight.
And definitely, if you want to tweet into the MMA Roundtable, tweet us at the MMA Podcast. We will be reading your tweets on air. That's the MMA Podcast if you are listening live. Chris is tweeting a bunch at us, and he had another comment saying that if Jay fought Rich Franklin, he would cheat at the weigh-ins. Keep Jay away from digital scales. I think Jay could cheat at the manual scales too. He would just put balloons full of helium up his ass, which would sort of take some of that weight off and move it up. You'd probably need a lot of helium, but I feel like Jay could figure it out because he is a big time cheater. Maybe like the linings of his pants would be filled with helium or something. I don't know. Moving on.
I'm walking around at 185 now anyway, so I'd have to probably make the weight, but no. If he's down for the fight, I'll happily accept it.
You would gain weight just because you're a cheater and you would want the advantage. All right, the last two topics are for fights that were scheduled, and I want to get your early thoughts on those. The first one, a heavyweight bout, Matt Mitrione coming off his suspension to take on Brandon the Hybrid Schaub this July. I don't know if they mean UFC 162, Silva Weidman, which will be July 6th. Don't know exactly what they are talking about, but what are your early thoughts on Mitrione Schaub? Schaub's shown he does not have an iron chin. I think Mitrione will get the knockout.
This is a strange fight because obviously on the show, they both obviously came from the same season of Ultimate Fighter, which is the season that Roy Nelson won. But on the show, clearly, Brendan Schaub was the better fighter. I mean, he made it to the final. Matt Mitrione lost to James McSweeney, who isn't a high-level fighter. But since the show, Mitrione's improvement has been amazing. I mean, he's a different fighter from the show. He's come on leaps and bounds, where Brendan Schaub had a good run at the start and then has just become this guy who can't take a punch. I mean, we've seen him get knocked out against Nog. We've seen him get knocked out against a few people we thought he was going to beat. Ben Rothwell was obviously one as well. But yeah, I'll be picking Mitrione to win this fight if they fought, and I think it'd be within the first round as well. I mean, Mitrione destroyed Phil DeFries.
If DeFries can get the takedown on Mitrione, then Shuab's going to be in the same boat. So that's how I got it. I got a first-round knockout for Matt Mitrione. I just think Mitrione's takedown offense with that might not be the best. It will be good enough to beat Brennan Shuab.
For sure. All right, sorry. Moving on, the last bit of news: Damian Maia taking on Josh Koscheck at UFC 153. I love this fight. Man, there's so much that could go down this fight. You have Damian Maia, who has looked like a stud at welterweight. He's knocked off some top guys 3 in a row since moving down, beating Dong Young Kim, Rick Story, and John Fitch. I actually think he wins this fight over Koscheck. You know, you look at the directions both of these guys are going. Maia's going up, Koscheck's going down, and I think they continue the direction that they're going in.
I love this fight. I love the welterweight division. How can you not like this fight? You see, Koscheck has got the ability he's probably got the ability to keep it standing and knock him out, but will he be able to do it? Because Maia right now is looking like no welterweight in the world is going to stop him. Maybe not even GSP. It might take somebody like Rory McDonald. But Maia, man, this is a fight for him to win. You got to remember that you got to remember the GSP Koscheck fight where both men ended up. Neither man could take down the other. This would be a big fight if Maia can pull it off. But he's got an obstacle, man, and I'm looking forward to this fight. UFC 163. I'm gonna wait for that one.
I think this is a great matchup as well. I mean, Damian Maia was super impressive in his last fight. I mean, he literally fitched Fitch. I think Maia could take this fight. I really do. It's a strange matchup in the sense of Maia's coming off a win and Koscheck's coming off a loss, because normally they like to match winners versus winners. But yeah, I'm super excited for this fight, and I'd see either Maia winning by sub or by decision, depending on how good Koscheck's sub defense is. But Maia all the way.
Hell yeah, and that is our last topic we got for the MMA Roundtable. Unless anyone has any more topics to add in, thank you so much for listening. You can catch the MMA Roundtable every Thursday, 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern, 2 to 4 Pacific, and 10 to 12 on air in the UK. Ray, you want to plug MMA Mental one more time?
Yeah, just shout out then to obviously always check out our shows. We've also made headway with another major promotion this week as well. So we've got I've got media credentials this week for Cage Warriors, which I'm excited for. Jesse Taylor's headlining that event, so that should be good. But if you want a chance to win 2 UFC tickets to an event of your choice, pop over to MMAVictor.com. All the details are there. It's free to register an account, and if you think you know MMA, put your money where your mouth is. Come and prove it.
Jay, early stoppage. What's the word?
What's the word? It's an awesome show and you've got to go check it out. No, this is MMA Mental's Early Stoppage. It's roughly out every Monday. I don't have a clue what time, whenever I can get my guest on for. But yeah, wait around on Monday night. See if you're free for half an hour at any stage during the week. We will happily have you come and listen to the show. It's fantastic. This week was Ramses, which was a great laugh. On Monday it will be Patrick, which will be a good show, no doubt. And yeah, just check it out, guys. I'm really looking forward to it. And the show's been great so far. Thank you, Jake, and thank you, Ray, for coming on.
And Jay's losing 2-1 at his own game because he can't cheat at it.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Definitely check out the MMA podcast too. That's going to be starting next week every Friday night from 6 to 8 Eastern. Also, the word on the street is moving its time from Tuesdays to Thursdays. It's going to be at Thursdays at 10 p.m. Eastern. We actually had Chael Sonnen himself say it starts too late for him to come on. So we're moving the time literally to make it better for Chael and other guests who might want to come onto the show. Thank you so much for tuning into the Roundtable. We very much expect you guys listening. I can't find the goddamn outro music. There it is. Listen to MMA Mental, Word on the Street, the Early Stoppage. If you like MMA, and like I mentioned, go to MMAVictor.com, make your picks. It's a great game and forum over there. You definitely want to check that out. So yeah, thanks for tuning in once again for our friends who weren't able to make it tonight, Patrick, Chris, and Ramses, and those who were, Jay, Ray, and myself. We really, really appreciate the positive feedback we've gotten and the support we've gotten. And until next week, we gone.
Refuse to see beyond the lines, you go blind. Rocket travels the 10th planet, I flow free. I'm welcome on mini-max, gi to no gi. Though my branch traces roots to the original tree. Roots sprouted from the original seed. Water with blood, sweat, and tears. Spotlight with sunlight. That tree became a forest by like Tudo done right. Then Hoyts dominated them all in one night. And hate song hasn't been beaten in one fight. Flow with the gold, in a hit on an holly note. That to continue to win, we must continue to grow. Let's go! We did it, mama. We did it. We did it for the love of the game. We did it, mama. I did it for. Yes, sir. Mama, we did it. The game will never be the same. We did it, mama. I did it for. Triumphant, pour with pride and abundance. Look up to the sky, hide a little smile and amusement. Never grown accustomed to